So it's often quite difficult to fully determine what Orwell's beliefs were, partly because they changed so much. So in the 1930s, for instance, he suggested that fascism and capitalist democracy were flip sides of the same coin. In the 1940s, he dismissed such views as really crude and harmful. In the late 1930s, he was a pacifist. By the 1940s, he would present pacifists as objectively pro-Nazi. He was a lifelong socialist who also declared that to defend socialism is necessary to begin by attacking it. He was a revolutionary and an internationalist, but he also proclaimed that no revolutionary has ever been an internationalist. So he can be a slippery figure and a slightly perverse figure in some regards. But I think one can uncover a broader structure to Orwell's politics when one isolates some of the fundamental values that it seemed to serve, and that's what I try to do in the book. He liked to say, for instance, that his politics, or his socialism in particular, was a simple extension of a commitment to liberty, equality, and fraternity. I guess one of the problems, though, is famously, these values are often to be found at each other's throats. So while, on the one hand, it would be reasonable to suggest that liberty requires some fairly equitable conditions if it's going to flourish, and Orwell's very good on mapping the ways in which inequality connives against freedom, but the attempt to kind of institute this equality through a state or a centralized state might also seem to chaff against, say, minimalist interpretations of freedom, i.e. the freedom to do what you want and be left alone unhindered. And also the idea of a very centralized state that interferes in people's lives might seem to connive against equality itself, at least if you're committed to an interpretation of equality as the equalization of power. Orwell also thought that brotherhood was an extension of his commitment to liberty and equality. Fair enough. But brotherhood was often championed as a curb to the antisocial tendencies of liberty and equality. So it was a check to a kind of selfish or self-absorbed freedom, or a check to a kind of mistrust of others, or paranoia that might derive from an egalitarian ethos. So unfortunately, our big ideals conflict, and I think Orwell's life and his writings really express that conflict in really interesting ways, and that's one of the claims I make in the book.